Okay, so we can review. This past week, we went over the history of C++, and we covered the tools that are used in this class. The GitHub saves our source code on the cloud. Visual Studio Code and the C++ Cloud Compiler are the tools that we use to type in some C++ code and create the C++ program executable and run it. Um, we talked a little bit about catch-2 unit test case, and I showed you a simple demo later on in the class, right? We talked a little bit about CMake. We'll talk more about as the semester goes on. And then I showed you a simple Hello World C++ program, and I went over C++ and discussed how C++ is a core language, and then it has the library, which allows us to do more cool stuff in C++, specifically display stuff to screen, and then you'll see in the next class how we can also capture data from the keyboard. Okay, and they talk about the importance of unit testing, and we didn't have a unit test example on Monday, but we did on Wednesday when I talked about the CMake utility, talked about the C++ compile process. I talked about the high level, right? How as a preprocessor gets our source code, creates one file, feeds it to the compiler creates an assembly file, the assembly utility creates an object file, the object file, along with any C++ library class files, are linked together to create an executable. So jump back to the agenda, and then I talked about C++ programs in memory, how the memory in the computer and the operating system manages what memory is allocated to programs, like to Visual Studio Code, to the Hello program. And then I talked about how this memory is broken down in C++ programming to the stack, the heap, a little memory, static memory, and code memory. And then we look at the stack, which is a last in, first out structure. It has limited memory, about 1024 kilobytes. It is sequential, and for the most part, C++ manages it. The heap is 2 to 4 gigabytes. It is random memory, meaning C++ can give us chunks of memory anywhere in that free store or that memory space. C++ can manage it if we use a string or vector, and the developer can also manage it if we take control of creating dynamic memory. Okay, so next week we'll talk about the Cloud Compiler unit test example, just like we did for Visual Studio Code. I'll give you an overview of GitHub and show you how GitHub is used to manage our code and keeps a history of all the changes you make to your code throughout the semester. I'll show you how to upload source code to GitHub from Visual Studio Code and from the Cloud Compiler, and then I'll show you how to download to Visual Studio Code and Cloud Compiler any changes that may be on the cloud. Okay. I'll talk about CMake and how it helps you control which files are compiled in Visual Studio Code and in the Cloud Compiler. I'll also go over the development process again with an example. That means how we code in this class. We use a header file, a CPP or an implementation file, and then a main file. But more importantly, we also have a test file where we test our code. We'll go over examples for integers, input and output, decimals. We'll talk about this, what auto means, and we'll talk about characters and strings. Okay, so this week, your first coding assignment is assigned. I've not covered everything I need to cover for you to complete this assignment. I will after Monday's lecture, but you can get started on some of it. So you go to SRC Classwork 01 folder, Classwork 01 folder, and you open the types.h. I already have an example for you all, so don't erase this. Use it as a guide to help you code. What do you code here? The instructions tell you to create an int value function prototype named multiply numbers with one int parameters named num. What do we currently have here? We have a prototype for a function named some numbers that returns an integer or int value function has two parameters, int num1 and int num2. Notice the semicolon there. Notice in the CPP, I write code for the sum numbers and I include types.h. So let's go back to the instructions. So it's saying that in the CPP file, write function code. In the function code, what's the function code? Meaning in between the curly braces, okay? But for your function, for the multiply numbers function. Create an int variable named num2. I'll talk about that on Monday. Assign it to the value 5 and multiply num1 and num2. So just to show you, so how do we create an int integer variable? We can say int num equals 5. So that's how you create a variable. And then the instructions are saying in your new function, multiply num2 times num1 and return it. So meaning something like this, but multiply it, right? And in your function. Okay. In the test case, you test your function multiply numbers with parameter 10 and it should return 50. And then if you use parameter 2, it should return 10. How do I create a test case? I've demonstrated and I've also shown you how to test that when I create the sum numbers function, right? So you'll create another test case down here and you say test multiply numbers function. And then you say require, and then you'll say multiply numbers with the parameter 10. This one has two parameters. You will use one parameter. And then you set it equal to 50 when you pass in the number 10, and then you do another one, multiply numbers with parameter 2, and you set it equal to double equal sign, okay, to 10. And that should be green, and after you do that, you can go to the main program and type some code. Just preview of what I'll demo in the class on Monday. I will do something like this. So if I go to input in main, you see, so I'll go through this example in class, and that should show you how to capture from keyboard and call a function with the data you capture from the keyboard and pass it into the function and what have you. I will go over this similar example in class for you all, and once I do that, you will be able to complete homework 1. For now, you can do everything except the main program, so you should be okay. You can do the main program after Monday's class, and it shouldn't take you long. Okay, so next week, what we will cover is, let me come here. Okay, so I said we're gonna go through let me see here. Okay, I already talked about what we're going to cover, but let me show you what you need to read, okay? Just to make sure that at least you have some kind of idea of what you need to be aware of. So let me come here. So you, I hate it when it gets to tablet mode because I don't like the view. Okay, let me try to navigate here. So come here. Where's my menu? Oh, here it is. Okay. Go to content, and then I'm going to scroll down to Intro to C++. I'm going to readings and make sure in the Gaddis 10th or 9th edition, read chapters 2.1 through 2.18, chapter 3.1, chapter 6.2 and 6.7. If you're using the free book, then read chapters 2 and 3 and 4.1 and 9.1. That should get you ready for next week's lectures. Okay, if you have any questions, then please, on the homework, then please ask them in the board. So I'm creating a homework 1 collaboration, and you will click in here to ask any questions. Let me move this up to the top because it's our latest assignment. Okay, and I will see you next week. Thank you.